Hi, I'm Tom Eschen, the host of this Power and Politics podcast, a conversation about the big issues that are impacting New Yorkers and beyond the most with the people that are in the power positions that are making those big decisions. Today, we speak with Long Island Democrat Congressman Tom Suozzi, who took over the seat of George Santos, a Republican, earlier this year. We asked him about joining the fray in this campaign chaotic election season, but also about some of those bigger issues not impacting just Long Island, but also New Yorkers and beyond. The mask ban that went into place there in Nassau County, along with the trans sports controversy that originated from there and has taken over conversation, not just in New York, but beyond. We talk about Ukraine, also his work on the border, as he's a leading congressional Democrat on that issue as well. So make sure to subscribe to our Power and Politics podcast now, or you can see us on YouTube at CBS 6 Albany. We are joined by Congressman Tom Suozzi. He represents parts of Nassau and Suffolk counties down on Long Island. Thank you so much for joining us.
A little bit of Queens, too.
A little bit of Queens as well. Thank you for correcting me on that. Let's start with the business of the day here, just coming back into session after the district work period. I wanted to ask about, of course, we know at the end of this month, potentially you have bills to vote on when it comes to keeping the government open. Republicans are trying to tie the SAVE Act to that, and that is in regards to voting. Is that something that you think if it's tied to a spending bill, you would vote for that?
No, it doesn't really make any sense that they're doing that. Let's see if they even go forward with it. They may not have the votes. The bottom line is we've been through experiences where we come up close to shutting down the government, and we try to avoid that because it's awful for America. It affects a lot of people's services. It reflects very poorly on the confidence in the American government. So we can't do that. So you got to try and do these clean, what they call continuing resolutions, instead of trying to put these different messaging bills as part of it.
This bill, the message, is something that already is illegal, and that would be not allowing non-citizens to vote. Are you concerned at all about that rhetoric as someone that knows so much about the border and immigration is such a big topic right now, and when they're trying to double down almost on this?
You know, so the problem is that a lot of politicians are extremists. And they act like pickpockets. So pickpocket usually works in a team. One person comes and bumps into you, and when they're distracting you by bumping into you, the other guy picks your pocket. And so with a lot of issues in politics these days, people try to get you excited and agitated about guns or about transgender or about this issue or about that issue, and get you upset when you're not paying attention to the basic issues that affect people's basic quality of life. So we need to get back to some of the basics and just focus on the issues that affects people's wages, their benefits, their quality of life, the things that the people are concerned about. The border is an issue that people are really concerned about. I'm concerned about it. I've devoted a lot of time and effort to trying to secure the border and do so in a reasonable way. But the SAVE Act is not one of those things.
You're you're the co-chair of the Democrats for Border Security Task Force, and that was something that recently came about when you got back in. A lot of the Democrats, and even my conversations with them, they go on TV like yourself, and you talk a lot when asked about the border. They talk about the bill that was in the Senate that never got to the floor. Republicans will say, well, we never got to vote on it, but the narrative is that Donald Trump came in and scuttled the bill. I'm curious because that's become such a big talking point amongst your conference. Is that a bill that you think has a chance to pass here moving forward? Do you believe it's still in that bill? Because it seems like it's being floated out there a lot.
People are really concerned about the border. And you can't watch the images on television and not be concerned. And so finally, the Democrats, with the support of the White House, and the Republicans, conservative right-wing Republican, James Langford from Oklahoma, and an independent, Kirsten Sinema, in the Senate, negotiated a bipartisan bill. Build more wall, hire more Border Patrol agents, hire more immigration judges, change the rules, fix the asylum system, and a whole bunch more. Give money to New York and to other states that are dealing with this issue. So many good things. And it didn't have everything that a Democrat would want, like the Dreamers and things like that, but said, okay, we'll do it. We'll support this bill. And this Republican conservative that negotiated, he'll support the bill. And Mitch McConnell said he would support the bill, and he doesn't support anything. The Wall Street Journal is going to support it. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce supported it. The president of the Border Patrol Union, who's a big Trump guy, said he would support it. Everybody says, we're going to support it. The President Biden and Vice President Harris will support it. Okay, let's go forward. Trump calls up his colleagues in the House and the Senate and said, don't vote for that bill. We don't want that to happen. We don't want to give Biden the victory. We want to run on the chaos. And that sabotaged the bill. So that's like the worst kind of cynical politics that people are sick of that stuff.
Do you think that bill still has a chance?
Yes.
Is that why it's being talked about so much? Because you think it can come back and be reformulated, or?
Well, even Kamala Harris came out and said she said, give me that bill, I'll sign it if I'm the president of the United States of America. I think it's a smart thing to do on her part to show that the Democrats are taking the border seriously.
Do you think Joe Biden waited too long to put through his executive actions that have made a difference at the border? We've seen the numbers go down, but do you think it was too late in the process?
You know, I thought about this a lot, and everybody always talks about how Joe Biden is a creature of the Senate. He spent most of his life as a United States senator, and he believes in the Senate, where you try and get colleagues from both sides to negotiate a bipartisan deal. And he did a lot of big bipartisan stuff, infrastructure, the CHIPS Act, a whole bunch of stuff. So I think that he wanted to try and get a deal done in the Senate. He got a deal done in the Senate. He finally got a deal done in the Senate, I should say. And when it was sabotaged and it wasn't going to happen, he's like, all right, I better do something. I actually sent a bipartisan letter with me and a Republican Congressman, Brian Fitzpatrick, to the president, said, why don't you close the border in between the ports of entry and say you can't seek asylum there? And some other things as well that were like to help undocumented spouses of U.S. citizens. Everybody in America thinks that if you marry a U.S. citizen, you get to become a citizen, or you at least are safe. There are a million people in America that can't do that. They're married to U.S. citizens, but they're not. They can't get work permits. Yeah. So he did those things, and the numbers at the border have gone down dramatically. Did it take longer than everybody would have liked? Yeah, but like he's a creature of the Senate. He wanted a bipartisan deal. He put something out his first day in office, a proposal to deal with the border. But it just never, a couple other things going on. COVID, CHIPS Act, infrastructure, wars.
Yeah. We'll get to that maybe in a second. I wanted to ask about the district work period as well. And we just talked a bit about the county executive of Nassau County, Bruce Blakeman. These are topics that go beyond just your district when it comes to the mask ban and it comes to the trans sports legislation, whatever he wanted to put out there and got out there. Is that something your constituents are concerned about? Are those issues that are at the top of their mind where this is being acted on a pretty grand scale here?
I think this goes back to what we talked about earlier about the pickpockets. You get people excited about, everybody gets upset when you think about the topic of transgender boys who transition to girls playing in sports. That's kind of upsetting to everyone. I don't care what position you have. That's an upsetting issue. And when they asked the county executive about that issue and said, well, give us an example of when that's happened here in Nassau County. Oh, no, we don't have any examples. I mean, it's never actually happened. They've researched it. It's never actually happened. But everybody's all up in arms and they're all excited. And meanwhile, there's all these problems going on locally with the local government. So this is happening with too much in politics these days, where people are doing the theater and the performance and getting people excited. And meanwhile, people are concerned about paying their bills. They're concerned about the border. They're concerned about, real things instead of focusing on these histrionics and hyperbole and getting people upset.
What about the mask ban? I know that's something that's being considered at the state level as well.
The mask ban, the idea behind it is a good idea, okay? We don't want people wearing masks when they're doing these protests and holding hateful signs and saying nasty things and trying to hide who they are. I was speaking to a person the other day in Queens. I was going to different businesses on Bell Boulevard, and he had been robbed, and someone was wearing a mask. And they had a video of it from the security cameras, but they couldn't identify the person for sure because of the mask. So, I'm concerned about those things as well. I'm concerned about anti-Semitism and hateful protests. I'm concerned about crime. I'm concerned about people wearing masks. But then what happens when you have a person who's got a compromised immune system and they have to wear a mask, and that's what they do every day because they're concerned about their health. So I just think that could have been written better in a way that there could have been compromise where Democrats and Republicans could have supported it. But again, if you're only focused on the theater, if you're focused on distracting somebody like the pickpocket is, you don't try to find that common ground. So I think American people, New Yorkers, want us to get back to the basics of solving problems that affect their lives and not just this yelling and screaming at each other and attacking each other.
That's the economy. That's going to the grocery store, right, and saying my prices.
That's real life.
But you look at inflation's down, and there are measures being taken by Biden, Harris, in the last few. There's Inflation Reduction Act.
Hopefully, the interest rates are going to go down.
There's the interest rate. The Fed is finally coming, I guess, down on that. What is the right path in trying to make things cheaper? Is it incentivizing workforce? Where does that fall for you in making sense of this? Because it feels like there's a lot of things that are being thrown out there right now, as there would be. But for you, what's the right path?
There are so many factors that affect the cost of goods and inflation. What happened with COVID and the supply chain. What happens with the effects of the election, quite frankly. What happens with our competitors, our strategic adversaries, trying to withhold goods from us and put tariffs on our goods, then we put tariffs on their goods. Interest rates, the stock market, people's wages. People want to get higher wages. I mean, the minimum wage in America in 22 states, not in New York, but in 22 states is $7.25 an hour.
That's the federal minimum wage. Right?
It's federal minimum wage.
Yeah.
So if you make $10 an hour and you work 40 hours a week and you work 50 weeks a year, you get 2 weeks vacation, that's $20,000 a year. Even $15 an hour, 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, 2 weeks vacation, that's $30,000 a year. You're going to buy a house? You're going to educate your kids? You're going to pay for health insurance? You're going to retire one day in security? I don't think so. That's supposed to be the American dream. Whether you're a left-wing progressive or a right-wing conservative, everybody in America should believe in return for working hard, you make enough money so you have a decent life. That's the American promise. That's the American dream. We need to get back to that. So solving the problem of cost of goods, of what you're paying at the supermarket for your groceries, what you're paying at the gas tank, what you're paying for your mortgage, what you're paying in your taxes, are all complicated problems. And you can't solve complicated problems with people just yelling and screaming at each other. You need people of goodwill to actually sit down and try and find some common ground to address the real problems that people face. So,
is that a perception issue or a reality? Where people are seeing, maybe there's other ways that some goods there are cheaper options out there, because you hear the Biden administration talk about insulin. You hear all these examples of ways that they believe they've cut back on these things. Do you think people don't understand exactly where some of these more affordable, gas prices are down 50 cents right now.
Yeah. Gas prices are coming down. Interest rates will hopefully be coming down.
But it feels like people don't believe that.
They don't feel it. If you go to the supermarket, you got to pay more. You go out to dinner with your family, and you got to pay a bigger check. It's like, I go to dinner with my family. I pay the bill. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how high this is. I talk to different business owners about the cost of their goods, restaurant owners, how much the cost of meat or egg. Someone told me the other day the eggs are going back up again. It was up really high, then it went down, and it's back up again. So this is real life. This is not happening because, the president is doing X, Y, Z. There's whole international factors that are involved with this. Now, our economy, nobody believes it, our economy is so much better than Europe's, for example, or other places in the world that went through all these global disruptions related to COVID again, and all the money that was spent to respond to that. We have to all do a better job to make people's lives better. To do that, we need everybody to stop pointing fingers at each other and actually solve the problems.
Let's talk about pointing fingers. Republicans will say government spending has led to some of that inflated. And you look at some of those Infrastructure Act, CHIPS Act, that kind of stuff, and that is spending.
Government spending is 100% too high, and our deficits are too high. But if you look at the history of this country over the past 50 years, even the past 10 years, the deficits have increased more under Republicans than under Democrats, because what happens is they increase spending on a lot of different things, including defense, which we need to have a strong defense, but they also cut taxes on the wealthiest people at the same time. That's what causes deficits. And this is not just me, this campaign season. Do the research on the past 50 years in America. More jobs have been created by Democrats than Republicans. More deficit has been created by Republicans than by Democrats. So, Harry Truman used to say, you want to live like a Republican? Vote Democratic.
You talk about spending. Let's get to Ukraine, because I think there's been, and you look at what Donald Trump has said on his campaign trail, for example, that if Ukraine doesn't go to peace talks, he doesn't think that spending should continue to help support their war against Russia.
Totally irresponsible.
How do you feel about that?
Really,
my question.
we have to, Vladimir Putin is a bully. And Vladimir Putin is doing exactly what Hitler did in the run-up to World War II, which is invading another country that's a democracy and using killing and war to try and take over territory, and totally unprovoked. And we can't allow that to happen, not only because of the poor Ukrainians and how they're being affected by the awful actions of Vladimir Putin and the Russians, but then talk to the Polish people that are right next door in the next country, because they're concerned they're coming for them next, or other countries that people probably haven't heard of, like Belarus and other places like that. The Chinese are watching how America, and the whole world are watching how America is responding to this dictator invading the neighboring country, because they're looking at Taiwan. And will America and will the world community defend Taiwan, where 95% of the computer chips are manufactured in the world in Taiwan? Well, if China takes over Taiwan, how's that going to affect Korea and Japan and the Philippines and Australia? How's it going to affect America? Because if they cut off the supply of computer chips to America, we're in a lot of trouble. That's why there's such a big investment in global foundries in upstate New York. Is so important, because we have to become independent on some of these issues.
As someone yourself that went there to Ukraine, met with President Zelensky, I do have to provide this sort of narrative that's going on by some of the more extreme individuals in the Republican Party, and also the nephew of that man up there that I've spoken to. It says Ukraine is one of the most corrupt governments in the world, and that the U.S., you said unprovoked, the United States actually provoked the actions of Putin. What do you make of that conversation that people are using to justify backing out of Ukraine?
That's a complete misrepresentation, and it's very upsetting to me. And we have to remember that Bobby Kennedy's grandfather, Joseph Kennedy, was one of the people that said America first, and said, don't try and stop Hitler. Let's appease Hitler. Let's try and make a deal with Hitler. So it's the same, it's skipped a generation, but it's back to the exact same thing that was said in America in the 1930s by Bobby Kennedy's grandfather. We can't forget that history. The bottom line is that we have to stand for democracy. We have to stand for freedom. We can't allow people to say, we're going to use our army to go in and just take over your country because we want to do that, and we're bigger than you are, and we're going to do that. That's against the whole international order that we've enjoyed ever since World War II. And Vladimir Putin and his cronies related to the Chinese Communist Party and Iran and North Korea are trying to use force to try and break that international order. And nobody likes war. Nobody likes spending this money. Nobody likes death. But we have to stand for something.
Let's get back closer to home because of something that's happening here today. Former Governor Cuomo is speaking in front of a panel, a committee, about the nursing home decision that he had made. What do you think will come out of this? No matter what happens, we kind of have an idea of what he's going to say. What do you think is the result of any of this?
I don't know. I haven't really followed it that carefully, but I know that...
you were in office, right, when this all happened?
2020 through 2022.
Right, yeah.
Then I ran for governor of New York in a Democratic primary against Kathy Hochul and got my butt kicked.
But she, at the end of the day, she brought you back, right? She helped bring you back.
Yeah.
She didn't get in the way of that.
We get along fine. But people forget the fact that, New York, especially New York City, downstate, upstate as well, really went through a trauma because we were the first ones hit by COVID, and nobody really knew. I don't know if you remember, but I remember watching the TV in March of March of 2020, and you're watching TV, and everybody's online to go to the hospital to try and get a vaccine. Oh no, they're sick already, and they're coughing on each other. It's like raining outside, and then we end up with we've got tractor trailers with refrigerator trucks with dead bodies inside. I mean, this was really an awful. It was terrifying. I mean, it was really upsetting. I lost my father-in-law to COVID. You know, he's 90-something years old, but I mean, he's one of the first people to go in April of 2020. It was an awful, scary time for all of us. And, you know, I don't know what the right decisions were. I know that I felt at the time that Governor Cuomo was helping us lead. And listen, he and I don't get along on a lot of things, but, you know, was leading in the country and filling a vacuum of people that were not leading at the time. I'm concerned that it's September before the election season in 2024, and now they're doing a hearing on this now. This is kind of back to our same theme we were talking about before, where, you know, people are bumping into you and getting you upset and getting you angry, and meanwhile, we're not talking about the cost of goods. We didn't vote on the bipartisan Senate deal to get the border secured. You know, we're worried about the weather. I mean, I don't know what it's like up where this is showing, but I mean, remember, I think it was last year when the smoke was coming down from Canada, and it's like you can't go outside because the smoke is coming because they have these forest fires. And this is all climate change stuff. And it's, I remember thinking to myself, what would we do if that goes on for like a month or 2 months? I mean, how would we deal with that? We got all these real problems: cost of living, the border, the climate. You know, so many real things. And what are they doing? You know, let's do a hearing. Let's, you know, subpoena this guy. Let's attack this one. Let's kick the speaker out. Let's get a new speaker. Let's, you know, kick the speaker out again. I mean, come on. We got to, like, govern and deal with these very serious problems that are literally life and death problems. And we need people to start working with each other to try and get deals done and stop just attacking each other.
I was going to ask, what's it been like to jump back in at this point in an election year? And you kind of answered my question already, right?
Yeah, it's like, you know, when I first came back, you know, it was a special election I had in February. I just came back, and I remember going to the gym, and everybody's kind of like discouraged. I'm talking about members of Democrats and Republicans. I make a point of trying to understand Democrats and Republicans, where they're coming from, different parts of the country. People are discouraged because there's a lot of good people who want to do the right thing, but all the extremists get the attention. You know, the Marjorie Taylor Greens and the Matt Gaetz and the Boberts, and, you know, and the same on my side too. I mean, the extremists get all the attention, and the people who are trying to just do the work to solve the problems, you know, it's not really covered in the press. It's not really followed. So thanks for interviewing me. I appreciate it.
That's why I asked the question about being in the district, because I think some of those things with the constituents make a difference.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
well, listen, I love...
those conversations can lead to change. I believe in that,
I am
sure.
so grateful for the opportunity to be back in public service. I believe in it. I've gotten to do what I've always dreamed of doing, which is to try and help people. I've built buildings. I've cleaned up pollution. I've helped people, you know, get their Social Security check or get their tax refund or get their visa for their uncle. You know, I've helped people in some of their most desperate times. It's great to be in public life. It's great to be in public service. There's some downsides to it, obviously, a lot of them. But I'm really just very grateful for the opportunity to try and solve people's problems. I was mayor of my hometown for 8 years. I was county executive for 8 years. I'm now in Congress. I was 6 years, and now I'm back for another, whatever this is now, 7 months or so. I'm just grateful for the opportunity to try and help people and make things better. And it's a great honor to be in the United States Congress, despite all the problems.
Congressman Suozzi, appreciate your time. Thanks,
man. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening. Hit the subscribe button right now so you can stay up to date on these news-making conversations about the issues impacting New Yorkers the most: power and politics.